Good afternoon. Thank you for being 4 people who are punctual. I always appreciate that. And from my stand on not punishing the prompt, we are just going to get right in to our meat and potatoes. And everyone else will just have to catch up if that is their choice. So from yesterday, questions that I have are, we covered the needs analysis, we covered market conditions, we covered the brokermetric supply and demand chart, we covered month supply of inventory conversation, as well as, you know what guys, I am so sorry to do this to you, but I have been waiting for this quick call to come in and they're a little late. So let me put you on pause just half a second. I just need 1 minute. Sorry about that, guys. I apologize. That was, you tell people all afternoon, I have a hard stop at 4 o'clock. I have a hard stop at 4 o'clock. I have a hard stop at 4 o'clock. And what people hear is call up until 4 o'clock, call up until 4 o'clock. I'm like, no, that's not what I said. So my apologies on that. So where we were, I was going over what we went through yesterday, which was needs analysis. We went through market conditions. We went through the market conditions graphs using the brokermetric supply and demand chart, as well as the month supply of inventory chart, and then went through the SPA one time. Tell me what questions you have, what ahas did you have, what did you like, what did you dislike, what did you take away from those pieces of the listing consultation yesterday, so that I'm certain that you have all the questions that you might have answered.
Rick,
yeah.
If you don't mind, this is kind of hard for me to articulate because it's acknowledging something that I don't necessarily want to acknowledge. I think I'm a fairly aggressive person normally, and I have to confess some of these scripts come off as very aggressive, and I don't necessarily have a problem with that. I'm just working through it, and I guess what I'm curious about is it sounds like you use these scripts. Do they take a while to get the hang of? I mean, I know that with me, a lot of this is I get in my own way and I get in my head. But did these scripts come naturally to you, or were they a function of just you're engaging out in the field? And how long did it take you to get the hang of them?
Yeah, so great question. And what I would say is I'm not sure that any script that you didn't write actually comes naturally to anybody. I think, and I think I say that because you didn't write it, right? They're not your words. They're not necessarily some of the things that you might say in a normal situation. However, they are words. The reason we give you these words, they are words that work. So I'll go back to the analogy of Meryl Streep that I used, a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
The reality is, Meryl Streep is in real life is probably nothing like Anna Wintour, the Vogue editor that she played in The Devil Wears Prada, and yet she had to take some pretty aggressive language, some pretty mean language, some pretty rude and direct language, and make it her own to accomplish the goal of the job. So again, if that analogy works, great. If it doesn't, the other thing I would say is reading something on a piece of paper and being in front of another human and actually delivering it are two different things, right? I'm not certain that there is anybody who I've sat across from using these exact words who walked away from the conversation thinking I was aggressive for my own good. They might have thought I was aggressive on their behalf, which I'm completely and entirely okay with.
Yeah.
I don't know that I ever left anybody with feeling that I was kind of slick and working for my commission and whatnot, because I come from a place, even with these words, I come from a place of this is all about you. This has very little to do with me.
Well, that's why I'm asking, because that's the way you come across. And I like scripts. I did a play once years and years and years ago, and it was an incredibly fun experience. And the takeaway that I got from it is I probably studied my lines harder than anything I studied in school. And the big takeaway was memorize, internalize, and personalize.
Yeah.
Because when you do the third one, it's yours.
Correct. And what's always important to remember about that personalization, especially when you're performing a play or singing somebody else's song, right? That doesn't mean change the words. It means figure out how you get to say somebody else's words that make an impact and get the job done, right?
There's a performance aspect to this business, whether you want to admit it or not.
There is 100% a performance aspect to this business. If you're doing it well, there is absolutely. And I'll ask Debbie as well, because she uses these words, or at least a portion of these words, to this very day. And so, Deb, could you unmute and kind of answer Tony's question from your own perspective?
Yes, and Tony got to one of the pieces, which is you can't just say these words once and then expect that you're going to use them naturally. Right. Some of them you trip over the first couple of times you say them. So you need to, that's why practice is really important. And the other part is what Rick already said. You're not doing this to trick anybody. You have to keep your motives very clear, that your intention is to make the process clearer, more understandable for them, and you're doing it for their good, to help them get to whatever it is that is their good. And the thing is, these words are scientific. There's a lot of neuroscience that goes into this stuff. And it's why some of the things we encourage you to say the words by the words, because they're specific. And when you say, do you actually say those words? Yes, we actually say those words. Yes.
Yeah, I was literally asked late last night and again into this morning to jump on a Zoom with somebody who's struggling with a seller in getting their property priced correctly, to which I'm always happy to do. And what's interesting is it's in those scenarios that people often say, wow, you actually really say these words that you give us and that you teach in class. Yes, absolutely, or I wouldn't give them to you in class. But here's the other thing to remember is that when it's massively important to build a business that is based in contribution, so that you are coming at things from the perspective of how can I help? The other thing to remember is you are more effective when you are more objective, right? And so what that means is be careful that you don't fall down the rabbit hole of, well, my goal is to be friends with my clients, right? Because that's not the goal. The goal is to help them achieve their goals as it relates to their purchase or sale of real estate, right? And whether they like you or you like them is kind of irrelevant. And sometimes we get stuck in a trap of, if I'm too direct, they may not like me. I will tell you that as someone who's just kind of direct in my everyday life, I have found that people respect me more for cutting through the crap and not wrapping things in pillows and just simply telling the truth as things are, asking questions to help people move forward, than making sure that nobody's feelings are necessarily hurt, right? Because I come at solving issues first and worrying about how everybody feels about it second. And that served me really well, right? But both as a listing agent on the buy side, as a broker. I mean, so I can tell you that I haven't found resistance to, which is different than direct is different than, being a jerk. I'm not talking about that, because there's a version of this that if you're a jerk in delivering this stuff, well, I can see where the concern would be. It's so much in the delivery.
And you know what I'm going to say also, because we talk to a lot of agents who do not have scripts and do not know where they're going, tend to be bigger jerks. I mean, you bump into a jerk who doesn't know where they're going.
Yeah. A jerk with a script can hide they're a jerk.
So I will agree with that, because I have turned into a jerk when conversations in real estate have gone in directions that I've not wanted them to go, and I've just been so frustrated, and I didn't have a script.
And you know why, Tony? Because that's a great example. You know why you turned into a jerk? Because emotion takes over, right? You don't know what else to say, or you're not getting the results you're looking for. So emotion takes over, right? And sometimes it's hard in a position where emotion takes over to not sound defensive. I won't say jerk again, because whether you actually sounded like a jerk or not, but you may have started to sound defensive or impatient or things like that. And that's when emotion takes over, you're kind of lost, right? You do and say things that you wouldn't normally say as the normal you when you're emotional.
I said this maybe last week, that a woman that I met in this business said something that I've always remembered, and that is, you can say anything to anybody if you come from the right place.
Right.
And the structure in this keeps you in the right place.
Yes.
But you got to stick to the structure, because if you don't, then something can happen and you can get penetrated, and you can go to some places that might feel good in the moment. And I've got plenty of stories about that. But then after the fact, you realize, okay, I may have won a battle, but I didn't win the war,
Right.
So
true. So true. Yeah. So thanks for putting that out there, because I'm sure that you weren't the only one kind of thinking that. And there is a simple reality that, there's 16 of us on this call. Fully half of us, well, I'll say half of you, because I know I'm not going to make a change, right? Fully half of you will go through this whole process and learn these scripts and then decide not to use them, right? That's just real. And what I would encourage you to do is don't be one of that half of people, right? Be the half of the people who says, you know what, I'm just going to, because you'll get there eventually. So why go through 2 or 3 years of struggling, because then your results suffer as well, and the clients suffer as well. Let me give you another example just quickly of before and after scripts. Before scripts, my listing consultations were on average 2.5 to 3 hours long. Now, that's not just a waste of my time. That is, I'm certain, in a court of law, would be defined as cruel and unusual punishment for the client, You know, Debbie said yesterday, the only reason the reason we got so many listings signed is because people were like, you know, they're never going to leave if I don't sign their piece of paper. And that was before scripts, because before scripts, I thought the best way to communicate was to tell them absolutely everything I knew, everything I ever knew, and everything I might someday know, all up front, so that I was as complete as possible. I was comprehensive in what I was reviewing with them. Right. And I didn't do it to bore them. I didn't do it to grandstand. I thought that was the right thing to do, to be as comprehensive as possible. And then you learn some different paths forward. And you know, with this system in place, listing consultations are 30 to 40 minutes longer if they have a few questions. And it's not cruel and unusual. And they get to participate, right?
I just want to add one last thing and I'll shut the hell up. And that is that thinking about some of the stuff that's been said in these last couple of sessions is, and I'll go out on a limb and I'm going to suggest that all of us here in our own way, we know how to lead. You know, I've thought about situations, sort of casual situations where I've been with friends and I've led things. And you know, the reason why I bring this up about the scripts and them coming across a certain way is because I know I get in my head.
Yeah.
And I just have to work through it because I know how to lead. I just need to get out of my head and just friggin' do it. So that's all.
Yeah. And so here's what that makes you. It makes you human, right? Welcome to the human race, because we all get in our heads, right? It doesn't matter how much we know, how practiced we are, how confident we are. At some point, we all get into our heads and we get ourselves in trouble because we start overthinking things, right? And then if you're predisposed, as I think we have determined, Tony, that in past conversations that you are predisposed to overthinking, right? If you're predisposed to that, you know, you are, I certainly am. Then when your head takes over, then we do a number on ourselves, right? It's not just a distraction anymore. It turns into a whole thing. So it's a matter of it doesn't matter if you're 20 or 90, right? You continue to learn more and more about how to tame what's in between your ears to be better at something you want to be better at. And if you're willing to look at yourself in the mirror and recognize where you have strengths and where there are opportunities for improvement and dive into what it takes to improve those other areas, you come out the other side of whatever that new project is, there's that new role is, that new employment opportunity, right? New business opportunity like real estate. You come out on the success side. You just can't show up and decide that you have nothing left to learn, and you know, I am what I am, and this industry has to fit into who I am, right? Because I will tell you that I tried it that way and it didn't work as well, right? Youth and arrogance sometimes combined don't paint a pretty picture. And that's how I came at this industry. Like, you know what? Now I'm here. This industry is going to bend to my will. And it just doesn't work that way. You know, you create some success, but then you get stuck. And so then I had to go back and say, where am I struggling? Well, I'm struggling with a little bit of arrogance. I'm struggling with being stubborn about certain things. What if I let go of some of that and started to listen to other people who tell me things that they're doing successfully and try that, right? All righty. All right, so does everyone feel like they've been through a therapy session now? I do. Whew, I feel so much better. My goodness. And yet, some of this learning, if you're not open to having kind of a deeper conversation about yourself, like we just kind of had, right? That was like an open conversation about some of our brains. If you're not willing to have that with yourself, it makes all this stuff harder. And it delays your ability to create the results you're looking for until you are willing to address it. So thanks for putting it out there. All right. So specifically with the SPA, right, that we went through yesterday, any questions about that process, about what we bring to the table, how we address it with them? I modeled that through with Donna for you to help you hear kind of the through line of going through the comps. Remember, This version doesn't have you necessarily sitting and saying, okay, comp number one is 123 Main Street. It's got 4 bedrooms and 3 baths. It's 1,200 square feet. It sits on an acre. And mostly we don't necessarily do that line by line, because the whole idea is to have them participate. And if you're just telling them the stuff that you think they need to hear, they're not picking up the piece of paper and reviewing it. They're not looking on the screen to really dive into the comps themselves. So don't be afraid to engage and involve the sellers at that level. Don't be afraid of the silence that sometimes comes with that, right? If you ask them a question, hey, could you review these and let me know your thoughts about how comparable they are to your property? You have to be willing now to like staple your lips shut or sit on them, one of the two, and allow them to now work, because you've just asked them to work. There is nothing that drives me crazier than people who ask me a question and then answer it before I've had an opportunity to participate. It's like, okay, why did you ask me to participate in any of this if you're asking and answering the questions before you give me a chance? Right? Be cautious that in your consult, that you're the one asking the questions and you're giving enough time, even if that includes silence, for them to do the work and then give you some answers, right? It's a very different feeling to ask a question and have everyone kind of sit and work. Sometimes if you're working with a couple, the couple may start to discuss something on their, amongst themselves, and you're just kind of sitting there as a third wheel in some of that, waiting for them to come up with some answers, which sometimes takes time. You have to grow a comfort around some of that, because without comfort, which comes from a lack of confidence, you then start talking over what they're trying to accomplish, which then takes the whole banner of participation away from them, right? And so then you wonder why they're not coming up with the right answers. Well, you haven't given them enough time to, right? Get real good at saying things like, you know what, take your time. I know that this is a really important decision. Please take your time. Instead of behaving as though you really have someplace else to be and you wish they'd hurry up, which is what you continuing to talk over them or under them or with them can look like. Any other questions on the SPA? This is your opportunity. Yes, Frank.
Okay, so going back to the example of yesterday and the role playing that you did with Donna, if I'm correct, she wound up going in her, in her role there, looking at the 3 comps and saying the 475, I think it was.
Yes.
I believe that was the number that you were looking at in your role. What if it were not? What if she said, well, this one was 475, so now I want to go to, 490, because even though they had the more updated kitchen, as she said, mine has this or this or this advantage, so I think I could get more.
Right. So that's a great question.
Now, what's your response? So
yeah, so I can role play that with you in just a second. I'm gonna give you some overview first, because remember yesterday we talked about there's kind of the rest of your career and there's today, and some of the answers for questions like that you would ask may be different based on what's happening in the market right now. Right, as I mentioned, we are living through an anomaly in the market right now, right. And so if the real number based on the, oh my goodness, guys, I am so sorry. I just have to put you on hold for one more minute. I so apologize for Okay, sorry about that, guys. One of your colleagues is standing trying to cash a commission check, and for what reasons I can't explain, there's drama around the commission check. So just trying to get one of your colleagues paid. And so knowing that you would want me to take a pause to get you paid, I figured you would be okay with me taking that pause. And I've now been told that that is the last phone call I receive on that. So so let me answer that question, and then I see that Robbie and Ronnie both have additional questions. I will come back to those. And so the quick answer to the question, to Frank's question, is if the comps point to 475 and the owner is looking at 489 or 490, I'm going to tell you what, for me, in most scenarios, that's pretty much the same number. I don't know that I'm necessarily going to be too concerned about that, right? Especially in a market that's moving as quickly as today's is. And so if there's a $10,000 or $15,000 kind of, I'll call it a discrepancy. And that's not the best description of it. But it's $10,000 or $15,000 based on over and over above what the comps say. For all intents and purposes, I don't know that I'm arguing too much about that, right? If it seems to make sense with the actives and the comps are at least close to that number, let's go for it and see what happens. Now, if that number all of a sudden became 510 or 525, well, now we need to have some conversation, right? And that's where we kind of ended yesterday, where I set a policy in my business of anything about 8 to 10% high with an additional conversation that the market clearly doesn't agree with. Like, my interpretation of these market stats and your interpretation of these market stats are different, which is not really true, because the seller interprets the market stats the same way as I do. They just don't like what the market stats are telling them, right? And so then there's a conversation around, okay, without, like, I'm not holding you to any numbers. Let's just base a conversation off of the data on the table. If we only made a decision based on the data on the table, let's say you were positioning somebody else's property, what would that decision be? Where do you think the best number is? Right? You have to help the seller sort of separate out the fact from the fiction. It's okay if you and they decide to go into business together based on the fiction that is in their head. That doesn't make you or them bad or wrong per se, especially in today's market. Right? Debbie, have you had like head scratching moments where it's like, where do I price this thing? Like, you might be right, I might be right, we both may be wrong, and it might go for $200,000 higher than what we put it on for.
Every day. I mean, practically every time. I'll now tell you one of our most recent. We started out, there was about a 2-month period between our first meeting and when we listed the property. And the number we were looking at was $599. And by the time we got to the table, the spring had happened and the numbers were definitely moving up. We could see that. And they said, you know, we really feel like we need to start with a 6. And I said, well, so let's look at the comps. Looks like 629 could work. They said, yeah, we want to do 649. And I said, the strategy is price for competition, not for negotiation. And I'm concerned that 649 is negotiation number. Turned out it wasn't. And we got 685. Okay.
Yeah. So
That
don't
price for competition, not for negotiation, is huge.
yeah. And don't be afraid. Today, the margin for error is kind of enormous, right? I mean, you have this huge margin. Now, again, that's the anomaly of today. In a more normalized market, 475 to 490, I don't know that I would necessarily bat an eye. As we started to get to 499 and then over 5, right? I might ask some questions about price pointing. I might ask some questions about, in Donna's scenario, if you remember, Donna's scenario, her main issue was she wanted to make sure that she had a fast offer, right? And so if all of a sudden she was starting to head into that 20,000 or so over, again, not in today's market, but in a more normalized market, if she was headed into that 499, 505, 509 arena, we'd start having conversations to say, talk to me about the evidence that exists in the data that number will continue to, will deliver to you a fast offer, like in this first weekend, like you said was important to you. Well, I'm not sure that data exists. I would agree with that. And so my concern is the further north we go, the further north we hit to that, starting with a 5, is that your main priority of having something happen quickly starts to get less and less realistic. And so just going back to what you said before, which is more important to you? Is that timing the most important thing in the sale of your home? Well, yes, it is. Great. And so what do you think you could do from a positioning perspective? And notice the pronouns I used. I didn't say we and I didn't say I. I said, what do you think that you could do from a positioning perspective to ensure an offer in the first 4 days? And then I wait for an answer, right? The answer might be, well, maybe position it closer to what the comps say, or maybe the answer is, are you saying I should use a strategy that kind of underprices something? Or maybe the answer is, I don't know, you're the expert. I have no idea what the answer is, right? And there are objection handlers to help continue that conversation in any different way. The right answer, of course, is maybe I should stick closer to the comps. You know what, I couldn't agree more. What number do you think makes better sense? I'm still not giving a number.
I always ask them, at what number will they be happy with the sale? And then I pull them back and say, so they say 475. They say, okay, and what if the best that the market will bring is 460? How do you feel then? And what if it's 450? Until they go, oh, wait, no, I couldn't possibly. And then
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a great question. Y'all should write that down because it's a really good question.
You ask them, it's their house. And then if it's $1 million and it should be 475, that's a whole different game. Then you maybe do get up and walk out, but you can usually walk them down the path and get to a number, and then show them the comps, their competition, what they're going to be up against at the number they have chosen, and say, do you feel that your house will be the next one to be chosen?
And the other side of that is, again, in a more normalized market, if all of a sudden, in Frank's example, we were at 509 or 525 or something like that. One of the best scripts that exists out there is, it's actually at the bottom of your SPA script page. One of the best scripts that exists out there is you validate, right? You don't agree or disagree, you just kind of validate. I understand. Right. So what positioning do you think outperforms all the other properties and has you attract the next best buyer? Well, I think 525. Understood. I'm curious, what specific evidence exists based on the data that we just reviewed that would justify, in both the eyes of the buyer and the bank's appraiser? Because remember, we set that expectation earlier, that our job together, seller and listing agent, is to approach this from the perspective of looking at things through the eyes of the buyer and through the eyes of the bank's appraiser to make solid decisions. Whose eyes are we asking them not to look at through?
Their own.
Yeah, their own is exactly right, right? We're asking them not to look through their own eyes. because sellers' own eyes are not as objective as anybody wants them to be. Right, and so you ask that question, what specific evidence exists to support that number? Now, again, one of my techniques is if I disagree with the number, I never say it. I'll say that number or the number that you just mentioned, right? I won't say a number that I don't support, because what I've learned over time is the second you state a number, even if you say, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you can do almost anything. The one number that I wouldn't do, because I think it's the worst absolute possible decision for you, is 525. What sellers hear is, oh, well, Rick said 525, so that must be the number. It doesn't matter what's around it. So if they've said 525, I will validate that they've said it. I'll ask that objection handler question, what specific evidence exists? And see what comes back, right? Because oftentimes you get to kind of go round in circles, going through each of the layers of what they've insulated themselves with. So the first answer might be, well, you know, if I don't get 525, I don't have enough money to buy the kind of house that I'm looking for in Virginia. I understand. And yet, do you see that we have to base these decisions in order for you to create success on factual, objective data? So at the risk of sounding repetitive, knowing that your desire is to have more from this particular sale, what specific evidence based on what we just reviewed, the facts that we've just reviewed, exists that would support it outside of your desire to have more? Right? And at some point, I will tell you that my record is asking that exact same question 5 times in a row. 5 times in a row to get through the layers of, well, I want this, or I think I deserve that, or my neighbor told me I should get this, or whatever those answers are, right? And I get to understand each and every one of those answers. By time number 5, and it was in a price reduction conversation I was having for one of your colleagues a number of years ago. And by the time we got to time number 5, this woman was beet red. Oh my goodness, she was just so irritated with me. And so remember yesterday I said, don't be afraid to call out what's happening humanly in the room. And so I said to her, you know, Mrs. Just, at the risk of, first of all, you look so frustrated with this entire process. And I am so sorry, because I have a feeling that I may, at least at some level, be the cause of your frustration. And I apologize for that. It's certainly not my intent. My intent is only to help you make really great decisions so that you can get to Maine like you've said you desire to get to Maine. That's where she was going. I said, so at the risk of you punching me squarely in the nose, I dare ask one last time, what specific evidence, based on the data that we just reviewed, and by the way, that physicality is part of the script because you have the data in front of you. And so every time I say it, I'm pointing them back to what we just talked about. So there's not a big surprise about what facts I'm looking at. I'm like, these ones we just talked about, to support the number that you want to stay at. And she looked at me and she looked at her husband and she looked back at me and she looked back at her husband and she broke out into tears. Poor thing. That was my Barbara Walters moment. When you make them cry, then you know that they're yours. No, I'm kidding.
Well, but that's the reality of the market. Markets go up and markets go down. And we had the privilege of working through markets where when the things that we had to tell sellers in their own best interests did not make them happy.
Yeah. It's
No
like
way around it.
It's like being the doctor who gets to walk in and read the test results, right? Sometimes the test results are, you know what? You are like a perfect specimen of health. And sometimes the test results are different. And as a professional in the medical field, you have a responsibility to deliver that information objectively and then work towards, here are the things we can do about X, Y, or Z, right? All right, there were two other questions. I think Ronnie had a question and Robbie had a question. Ronnie, why don't you go first?
No, I'm sorry. I tried to just put the thumbs up when you said about taking the call for the commission for someone.
Oh, got it. Robbie?
What strategy did you use to like nail these scripts down to have it like seem really natural and not, not like you're reading off a piece of paper, obviously. I mean, other than memorize, like I'm just wondering how the strategy that worked best for you to kind of make it not hard to like go to this in your head.
Yeah. So the very first thing, I'll start at the end. The end result answer is having it all kind of in your head and turning it off. Because the most skilled consultants, if you and I are, if you're the seller and I'm sitting having that consult with you, my brain is kind of turned off to any script work and is solely focused on the questions you're asking, the things that you're saying, right? And what happens over time is you start to equate, okay, Robbie said this, therefore I kind of go back in my little brain, pull out one of the drawers, open one of the drawers of, so if you say, if you're objecting to, the comps or whatnot, well, there's a drawer back here in my brain that says, okay, objection handlers for don't like the comps. And so I'll just kind of file through one and ask another question based on that objection handler. And the question might be, oh, that's very interesting. Talk to me about, it's funny because I find that there are agents who, in a scenario like that, where Robbie says to me, well, I don't think any of these comparables that you pulled are anything like my house. And I find that there are agents who will start to argue that. Well, no, they are. They're the best ones. I spend an hour and a half doing that. And I can tell you they're the best ones. And then there are consultants, right? And so a consultant in that scenario will say, wow, that's a surprising answer to me. Talk to me about what you think is different. Talk to me about what you're seeing. Give me your perspective on that, right? And then it's just a dialogue. And what I have found is that sometimes by allowing them to express all of that, they express it all. And then we get to say, well, so would it surprise you to know that of the 13 or 22 houses that have sold in the last 3 to 6 months that made any kind of sense, these are the best 3 as it relates to being comparable to your house. Can you imagine what the other 19 might have looked like had I brought them to the table? Right? Because there is, just because these 3 don't match up or line up perfectly, which they rarely do, right? They're comparable homes. They're not identical homes, they're comparable. And I like to use the phrase basically comparable, by the way. You add that into whatever you're trying to accomplish, because basically comparable is a little looser than directly comparable, right? So I was answering a different question, Robbie. So the end result is you have it in your head and you forget about them. How do you get there? You get there by doing it a whole bunch of times, either with real people or with each other, right? You practice and you practice and you practice and you practice and you practice. Right? It's kind of the same thing as the surgeon, right? Who practices on dead people before they give them somebody alive to cut into, right? You've got to know what you're doing before you put a live seller in front of you. So it's a lot of practice. And one of the techniques that I always found really, really helpful was if you turn back a couple of pages, remember this page that had the 7 or 8 questions on it? Actually, you do, because you read it. It was the market conditions questions that you read to me yesterday. You can take each of these script pages, right? We gave this to you this way for a reason. It's to model how you can get away with in the early part of your career, how you can get away with not having to have all this stuff jammed in your head, is just type it out this way. type it out such that you have each piece of the script kind of broken out with some lines underneath it, and then just have all that on a clipboard. And you can literally go through that clipboard with your seller. Nobody thinks twice about the fact that you're referencing a clipboard to ask the next question, because when you ask the question, you take your pen and you write down their answers on the lines underneath. It seems very, very natural. So that's one of those cheats that you can utilize to, and frankly, having a reference, it just keeps you on track. Debbie and I used to use a PowerPoint, right? Not because we were like going through death by PowerPoint with the seller, but the PowerPoint itself was there just to kind of keep us on track so that we knew what that next conversation was. Does that help?
Yeah, no, definitely. Thank you.
Sure thing. That and the other answer, Robbie, is time. It's time, right?
No, because it's so, I was just, when I'm reading all this stuff, and obviously I think it's so great, I was just saying, it's really hard to have like fake conversations with like answers. Like even when you're doing it with Donna, like I could, like, you know, she has it in her head. She knows it a little bit. It's hard to like get, if somebody throws a curveball at you, it, you know, other than like practicing in a real life situation, it would be hard to, you know, to do that.
Yeah, it's why role play, right? And I know like as adults, we don't love to hear those words. It's why it's so important. It's so important to you know, like a whole bunch of us like sit in a Zoom room or sit in a conference room in the office for 30 minutes, right? One-on-one or 2-on-1 where it's one-on-one in terms of the dialogue, and the third person is kind of listening to take notes to help give notes to the other person who just handled the objections. If it were me, I would challenge each other such that when you saw each other walking down the hall in the market center, right, you knew that when I pass Robbie, I'm going to say, not, hey, how's it going? Nice to see you today. I'm going to say, you know, will you do it for less? Will you do it for 4%? And bam, he's got to come up with the objection handler for commission when he sees me in the hallway. He's not expecting me to say that. And the next time I see him in the hallway, he's already with that commission objection, except I say, well, you know, will you take a 30-day listing? Oh man, now we pivoted to term. Crap, now I have to have an objection handler for that, right? And so that's kind of the fun you can have with each other to help each other get better faster, by just keep challenging each other. Challenge your brains to have to learn this stuff faster. Trust me, if your income depended on you going out and taking listings tomorrow, and perhaps for some of you it does, you will learn this stuff very quickly. Right? I told you when I got into real estate, I didn't get into real estate because I didn't have anything else to do. I wasn't bored. I got into real estate because I had moved someplace that I didn't know a freaking soul, and had a baby at home, and I needed to make money. So I learned what I had to learn really quickly. It's all about motivation, right? So you get there. If you want to get there, you'll get there. Here's what I would encourage you though. Don't hear what I just said and say, okay, you know what, the shortcut to what he just said is just go and make it up. Because going and making it up, it compromises your results. Let me restate that. It can compromise your results. Right? There will be some of you who can get a certain play. I did pretty well for myself as a listing agent without having to learn specifics. Here's what I figured out though. I only got to a certain point. My business only, my natural talents only brought me so far, right? Remember we talked about E to P on our very first day? That entrepreneurial style for me brought me right where I needed to go, but I couldn't break through to that purposeful style. That's when I needed tools and scripts and assistance and practice and and role play and all that stuff to have me actually show up on purpose to achieve at higher levels. And everyone's natural ceiling of achievement is different. Just don't forget that being on purpose about this stuff always brings you better results. If I want to torture myself, I go back and think to myself, man, if I was really trained well and did the things I really should have done right from the beginning, like what did I leave on the table those first couple of years? Oh, man. And then I just decided not to torture myself and decided it all worked out anyway. But the point is, you have that choice. Right now, you have that choice. Anything else on what we covered yesterday? All right, so I want to show you something real quick, and then we're going to move to the anatomy of a seller transaction. Where is that? If you go to I'm going to share my screen with you. If you go to Google and Google Mike Ferry 40 objections, there's this great PDF that you can print out called 40 Real Estate Objections Handled. It comes from the Mike Ferry Coaching Organization. I think it's really quite good. I'll show you what it looks like. So you get, here's objection number 1. If I list my home with you and buy my next home, will you cut your commission? Right, number 2, I have a friend in the business, right? I have to keep that promise. Number 3, marketing plans. Prices and comps are different. What's the deal there, right? So you have all these different objections with objection handlers listed underneath it. And what's cool about what he gives you is, like for this one, why is your price so much lower than the other agents, right? And so you get this objection handler, which is a little bit lengthy. And then down here, you get what he calls top agent alternatives, which are almost always shorter and more direct, right? So instead of all these words, you can just simply say, you know what, look, they emphasize whatever the objection handler here is, I'd rather see you turn down 10 offers than never get a 1. And that's the bottom line to answer that question. So go ahead and grab that and print that out for yourself, because there's a lot of really great script work in here. Once I am back from vacation at the end of July, we'll do an objection handling class so that you can kind of bring the objections that you need to have solved, the things that you worry about in your head and whatnot. And we'll just kind of go through those and brainstorm through some great objection handlers. You can use that document, however, in the meantime, in case you come across some of those same issues. Does that help? Yes, Frank.
Rick, sorry. Did you say yesterday that there's another class where we'll be looking at the actually doing comps?
Yeah, so that's Friday at 1 o'clock. I'll do Know Your Numbers, right? So if you look on the calendar, that's Know Your Numbers this Friday at 1 o'clock. And
okay.
If you can't be there for it, I will record it, so it'll be on the YouTube channel by Monday morning.
Okay, great, thank you.
Sure thing. Any other questions on the listing console? Yes, Ronnie.
You know, I have a question. Oh, wait, I did unmute. So I have a question about, I never saw, I think you said you were going to post all the numbers on like the towns, the sales that were up and all that information. I still haven't figured out 100% how to get that off the MLS. Was it posted anywhere?
I thought it was. I know I sent it off. I was asked, your leadership asked me for it. I gave it to them. So I can't answer that specifically.
Okay. All right. Would it come from, who would it come from if it?
You know, it's a great question. Okay. Let me find out where that ended up and
right.
Where to tell you to look for it. And I'll get back to you on that tomorrow.
Right. No worries. Thank you.
Sure. And also Friday at 1 o'clock on that Know Your Numbers class, I'm going to show you how to pull all that stuff. So if you're interested in
Oh,
knowing
great.
how I pull those stats town by town, because it's really quite simple and takes very little time. And then you always have up-to-date
Yeah, I would
numbers. You have
appreciate that.
numbers that are a month old.
Okay, just haven't gotten to it. So that would be great. Thanks.
Yeah. And again, if you can't be there live on this Friday, I will record it and post
Okay.
it. All right, guys. So let's do this. Let's recognize that going through the listing consultation one time doesn't make you listing experts, right? It doesn't necessarily make you feel like, yeah, I'm going out and I'm going to list 3 properties this weekend, right? Unless it does, and then that's awesome. But for most of you, you're going to feel like, all right, I'm still trying to figure some of this stuff out. And that's completely normal, right? That's exactly how you're supposed to feel. But you now have the tools, and we've had some of the discussions, and you've heard some of the dialogue that goes along with all of this, such that you can start practicing it on your own. Yes? Do you feel like you can start practicing it on your own?
Yes.
Cool. All right.
Yes.
So, and then the other thing that we're going to spend most of August doing, besides prepping for Mega Camp and having post class after Mega Camp, we're going to spend most of August doing some live rehearsals, right? So do watch for that, right? You won't see it on the July calendar, because we'll start it in early August, and that will be an opportunity for you to come in and just run your scripts, run your lines. Practice it once or twice, right? Depending on what piece you want to practice, we'll have 30 or 40 minutes per person. We can sit in a training room for 3/4 of the day and go through as many people as we possibly can. It's a whole lot of fun because your colleagues can sit there and kind of watch what goes on. You can sit there and watch your colleagues practice. I know for some of you that sounds terrifying, but here's what I can tell you. It's actually a whole lot of fun, and you learn so much by listening to other people, and they learn so much from listening to you, because at the end, I always play the seller, right? So you always know what you get with me, because I'm just sitting on the other side playing your seller. And my job as your seller is to help guide you through creating a through line, right? My job as the seller, unless you say to me, Rick, I want to practice with you being a real jerk, then my job as a seller in these rehearsals is to help you go from start to finish and feel confident, right? So the rehearsals aren't designed to trip you up. The rehearsals aren't designed to practice objection handling. The rehearsals are designed to help you recognize and solidify in your brain that when you say these words, here's what happens and good things come out as a result. So that's the path that I like to work with rehearsals. And then again, as you gain experience, you can come back to those rehearsals and say, okay, you know what, now give me a hard time. I want to see how prepared I am for someone giving me a hard time about price, or a hard time about commission, or a hard time about their sister-in-law is a real estate agent and why shouldn't they use them. I'm happy to be as difficult as you want. It's actually something I excel at, being difficult. But the idea of rehearsals, especially for many of you on this call, is let's solidify the process. Let's get a through line in your brain and give you confidence about how you deliver this, and when you say certain things, that good things happen, such that you're prepared to do it and then start worrying about objections. Because for those of you who have never sat in front of a seller before, or have rarely sat in front of a seller, here's what I can tell you. Most of the objections that you think sellers have live more in your head than in their head. Most of the time. So hopefully that allows your shoulders to relax a little bit. All right, guys, so it is 5:01. I'd like to spend some time diving through the anatomy of a seller transaction. I think you received that from me yesterday. So if you could haul that out, that would be helpful. We're going to go line by line through that. And really what this is designed to do is to give you an outline of what it looks like to receive an offer as a listing agent and bring it all the way through to the closing. Sound good? Great. So the anatomy of a seller transaction. We'll just start right at the beginning. Number one is receive an offer from a buyer's agent. right? So the first thing you're going to do there is check to receipt to make sure that you've received all the appropriate paperwork, all of which is listed right there, right? That's what you're looking for when you receive an offer. And part of your job, part of your role, your job in the role of listing agent is to make sure that the offers you're receiving on behalf of your sellers are complete. And if they're not complete, you have to go back to the buyer's agent and say, hey, you know what, it seems like we're missing this, or it's not signed, or if you can please complete that and send it back, I can get that then to the seller. Number 2 says, note, a verbal phone call stating that someone is bringing you an offer is not actually an offer. Right? Verbal offers are as good as the paper they're written on. Ha, ha, ha. Right? Do not proceed in informing anyone that you've received an offer until you've actually received a written offer and you're holding it in your hands or viewing it on the computer screen, one of those two things. Because here's what happens, right? Someone calls you and says, hey, I have an offer for you in about an hour on 123 Main Street. And you say, oh, great, I'm so excited. And you call the seller and say, hey, guess what? I just heard we're getting an offer on your property in about an hour. I'll call you back as soon as I get it. And an hour comes and goes, and the second hour comes and goes, and the third hour comes and goes. And now you're texting the agent saying, hey, just checking in. I know you said you had that offer coming. Do you need anything? Do you need any help? Do you have any questions I can help answer? Then the fourth hour comes and goes. Now it's dinner time and everyone's eating. Now it's after dinner. So guess what? Now you get to call the seller back and say, okay, just kidding. Maybe it'll come tomorrow, right? It just makes everyone look dopey. So recognize that when someone tells you that they're sending an offer, make sure that they know how to get it to you, physically get it to you, either handing it to you in person and or getting it to you via email. And don't make a phone call to the sellers until you actually have it in hand. Of course, if dual agency exists, you're going to have to get the seller's consent to dual agency before you move forward with presenting an offer. And so the way that, of course, should work is the buyer's agent has the buyer's consent on the dual or designated consent form, consent to that dual agency, then the seller's consent, so the document gets sent to the listing agent, the seller consents, and then it comes back around to me so I can consent on behalf of the brokerage, and then you get to go and present the offer and negotiate, right? And dual or designated agency exists when what happens? What has to exist in order for dual or designated agency to exist?
Agents from the same broker.
Right, so in our world, if it's you and somebody else from the same brokerage, which means either of our 2 market centers. So if you're affiliated with the Ridgefield Market Center or which includes Newtown and Danbury, or the Stamford Market Center, which includes the Westport Business Center, any of those agents, if they're on the other side of the transaction, we ask that you process a designated agency consent. If it's just you, we ask that you process a dual agency consent. If it's from some other brokerage, including brokerages where I'm not the personal broker, that are Keller Williams offices, like Keller Williams in White Plains, or in Hartford, or in Trumbull, no dual agency exists, just so that's clear. Number 4, once you've verified all the paperwork has been received, call the seller and inform them inform them of the receipt of the offer. If possible, arrange a time immediately to meet with them to present the offer in person. If in person doesn't work, then schedule some time to be on the phone, or even better, on Zoom, to review the offer. Now, I do prefer that they have a copy of the offer or offers in hand. Here's what I will warn you about. If in fact the offer comes in at 1:30 in the afternoon, and I call Tony, who's the seller, and tell him about the offer, that's great. Hey, when can we get together to review it? And Tony says, you know what, I am in meetings all afternoon, Rick. I'll be home around 6:30. So all decision makers can kind of dive in and work at 7 o'clock. Does that work for you? Great. You know what? I'll either come over and we can talk about it. And Tony says, yeah, you know what? We're just going to be in the middle of dinner as well. Why don't we do it on Zoom? Great. So 7 o'clock Zoom. I'm not pushing send to forward the offer to Tony at 1:30 in the afternoon so that he has 6 hours to stare at the offer and either be irritated about the numbers or have questions that I'm not around to help him answer. So do yourself a favor. Send the documentation so that Tony has it in hand, but send it at like 6:45. If you're meeting at 7, send it just before so he has enough time to open it, maybe print it out on his home computer, review it a little bit so he can ask specific questions. But don't send it way ahead of time, because remember, you're there to help guide them through the documentation. And if you're not able to do so, in the absence of some facts, people make up their own truths, right? So again, I've learned that the hard way. Okay, I'm sending you the offer. I'll see you in a few hours. And by the time I got there or got on the phone, it was like the world had ended. Like, what happened? This is a happy moment, this offer. But a lot of things were misconstrued and misunderstood. So number 5, review the offer with the seller. I know this sounds ridiculous, but I'm going to read this very specifically. Do this in an upbeat and encouraging manner, no matter what the price or terms of the offer are. Remember, someone liked their home enough to want to buy it, and the seller is not required to accept any offer that's not acceptable to them. And I remind you of that because to this day, I still hear agents getting on the phone with sellers. Now, in the last 12 to 14 months, this has happened far less because offers have been at or above asking price for the most part, right? And yet before we got into this kind of anomaly market, I was still hearing people say things like, hey, Tony, it's Rick. Yeah, we have an offer, man. You are not going to like it. Don't shoot the messenger. Man, oh man. I mean, I don't know what these people were thinking. It's like they think you're giving the house away or something. So, you know, I mean, I'm sorry. Let's go through it and see if we can salvage something out of what they've written.
That's an example of someone who doesn't know their script.
Yeah, that's right. It's also an example of a dope, right? Because think about it. And Debbie, am I lying that people make that mistake and go down that path, right? And they don't do it to purposely be bad at their job. They do it because they think they're creating a bond, like it's like misery loves company. They think they're on the side of the seller. And so if they're horrified by the offer, well, the seller is going to be horrified by the offer. So we can all be horrified together. Here's my question for you. Do you think that is conducive to helping the seller figure out how to make sense of the offer with the buyer to bring the parties together? Not at all, right? It's the exact opposite of that. They're going to, remember, you're always modeling behavior. Have I said that 900 times in the last 3.5 weeks? I think so. So let's go for 901. Because you're always modeling behavior, the behavior you model to the seller about how they should feel about the offer is just as important as any other behavior that you model. Be excited. You know what? For all intents and purposes, it's better than the offer we had yesterday, which was no offer. Now, that doesn't mean that every seller is going to be like, woohoo, 50,000 less than asking. Well, excellent. Let me do some I'm going to put you on hold and do some cartwheels. Hold on. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that you get to set the stage for how this goes. And if you're excited and positive about it, you have a better chance of the seller not shutting down regardless of what the numbers are. Make sense? You have to always encourage them that it is true. Someone liked their house enough to sit down and put pen to paper and offer them good, hard, cold money for that property. Now, if the money is not what you were looking for, we can maybe work on that. Remember, it's not where people start, it's where they end up. Number 6. The review should be done from top to bottom, hitting all the highlights. So guys, I'm going to read you this. This is my version of how you present an offer to a seller. Listen carefully, maybe read through with your eyeballs if you have it in front of you, and just take some notes. Make some marks as to the things that you note about how this presentation goes, because we'll talk about it at the tail end. All right, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. This offer is from Tom and Sally Smith, and they are coming to us from Pennsylvania. They have 2 kids and another one on the way. They'll both be working down in White Plains once they make their move to Fairfield County. They are opening negotiations on your home with an offer of $550,000. They'll look to finance 80% of that with a mortgage, and we have a letter of pre-qualification from Fairfield County Bank for that amount. Their ability to obtain this mortgage will be a contingency in the contract. The other 20% will be in cash, 10% cash total at contract signing, and the other 10% cash brought to the closing table. They have asked for the following extra items to be included in the sale at that $550,000 number: the pool equipment, the lower level freezer, and the play set in the backyard. Their contract will be contingent upon satisfactory inspections of the house, as well as of the septic systems, which will also include testing the well and testing for radon in both the air and the water. They're asking for 7 days to get those inspections completed, and they'd like to have contracts signed and back to you within 14 days. They have requested an August 30th closing date. So let's discuss. Talk to me about your thoughts. Do you have any questions on any term or any part of the offer that I can help you answer? So that's the example of a presentation of an offer. What are your thoughts on that? What did you like? What did you dislike? What were you surprised about? What were your ahas? Talk to me a little bit.
Just the facts, nothing but the facts.
Yeah, so it is an outline. It's a bullet pointed outline of all the facts, right? And I like what Frank said. It's the facts and nothing but the facts. So what I think he means by that is there's no editorial. I'm not giving my opinion about anything. I'm just presenting the facts of the offer. However, I want you to be clear. I'm presenting all of the facts of the offer. Because I do know of agents who say things like, hey, Tony, it's Rick. So we do have an offer. It's for $550 with an August 30th closing date. What do you think? Like, okay, that's not enough information. Again, you need to set the stage to help the seller understand these offers. Who's making them? What's driving the bus in what's in the offer? What are the important pieces? How is it broken down? What's the financing look like, right? In the last 12 months or so many of our listings have gone to multiple offers that these details have become really important. Some of these details are the deciding factors, and it's not just the money detail, right? So, and remember this, what you have in front of you was written way before the anomaly of the last 12 months. So my advice to you is go through and really outline for the seller exactly what the offer is made of without offering opinions. What else? What else did you notice? Yes, Ronnie.
Oh, I just had it. Oh, wait a second. I was just curious because of the way the market is. So is that standard now that 7 days to get the inspection completed? And I think you had in here 14 days, to have the contract signed and back, or has that been cut in half, or is that pretty standard? I'm just not familiar.
Most buyer's agents today are shortening those timeframes in order to win offers. And I mean, frankly, inspections, if you were asking me about writing an offer, inspections would be 24 to 48 hours,
Exactly.
right? Oftentimes the contingency of the inspection is being waived. They're actually doing them, but they're not. The contract isn't contingent upon the actual results. And a lot of times with what's happening right now in the market, the contract that the offer is presented on is the contract, right? So we don't have to wait 14 days for the attorneys to write new contracts. They're just presenting them on standardized contracts so that all that time frame gets erased.
So you're talking more like 24 to 48 hour time frame is happening.
For inspections, sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Again, and a lot of times those contingencies themselves are being removed.
Right, I understand that. They're
Might still happen, but they're
exactly.
not contingent upon
They're
it.
doing it just because they want to know. Mhm.
What else? What else did you notice?
You made them human.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Right. And that's really important for a lot of sellers. What you'll find is some sellers could care less. Right. Truly could care less. I will tell you that for me as a seller, I don't care who buys my house. I really don't, because once I move out, it's not my house anymore. I can't, I'm my grandmother's grandson. I can't help it. Right. And yet there are people who really are concerned about like who's moving into my house. And so humanizing them for those sellers is helpful to help them make decisions, because they want to know more. They want to know the who. So don't be afraid of contributing that information. What else did you notice? A couple of key things I want to make sure that you saw. How did we address the money? Okay, so I'll read it one more time. So they are opening negotiations on your home with an offer of $550,000.
They
Open.
didn't close it off.
Opening.
Yeah, exactly right. Right. Again, because in a more normalized market where we're not receiving 15 offers in 3.5 days all over asking price, in a more normalized market, you may be receiving offers that are below the asking price. And if I call Tony and say, I have an offer of 550 closing on August 30th, what do you think? What Tony may hear as the seller is 550, my house is on for 595. Why on earth would I don't want to sell it for 550? So again, how you communicate is crazy important, right? They're opening negotiations at $550,000. So now what Tony's hearing is, okay, they're starting there. I'm not sure. I think I want to end someplace different. But what he's hearing me say is, this is a starting spot, right? All right, number 7, be certain that you examine every line of the offer. You want to be sure to point out items such as contract language or anything that may come up later as a surprise to the seller up front. Remember, it's your job to review the documentation as it comes in. Your job is not to be their attorney. However, if it comes in on a form that you've never seen before, you should probably take a little time to read through that so that you can point out sometimes very innocent seeming forms have language type contract language embedded in some of the paragraphs in there, such that if they sign it, they've actually signed a contract, and maybe they didn't think they were signing an actual contract because they wanted their attorney to see it first, right? So just take a look, point that out, and if they ask questions around it, well, what does that mean? Does that mean if we sign it, we can't accept any other offers? Your answer to that is always the same. Great question. Now that I've pointed that out to you, the smart path forward is for us to get on the phone with your attorney and get their guidance about exactly how this is worded, right? You're not attorneys, so please don't practice law. And is anybody an attorney on this call? Because I oftentimes say that you're not attorneys, and then every once in a while I have someone say, well, actually I am an attorney. Like, so even if you are an attorney, in this scenario, you are not playing their attorney. They haven't hired you as their attorney, right? Because if you are an attorney, you're not ever going to be their realtor and their attorney. Please just make a note of that, right? For those of you who have a law degree, you're not going to play both roles. So in this scenario, even though you might have a law degree, or even if you might know the answers from previous experience, you're not going to give them legal advice based on what they may or may not sign. We're going to push that off to the attorney. Number 8, work with the seller so they fully understand the offer that's being presented. Answer any questions and counsel them on next steps. If the offer is acceptable, they may accept it. If it's not, counsel them on creating a counter offer, right? No counter is never a good business decision, right? Even today, where things are just moving so quickly, make sure everybody feels fairly treated, right? That's really important as it's actually your main job as a listing agent, is to make sure everybody, the seller included, feels as though they've been treated fairly throughout this whole process. Number 9, you may want to call the name on the mortgage pre-qualification letter and ask some questions about the buyer, right? Just making sure that I can remember one time, Debbie and I had a listing over on, boy, let's see if I can push my memory on this. I think it was Circle Drive in Ridgefield. And we got an offer from someone whose pre-approval letter said that they were pre-approved by the Royal Bank of Scotland. And what neither one of us caught was that the Royal Bank of Scotland, what that actually meant was all of the money was in Scotland and was going to take way longer to actually appear at a closing here in the United States. And because we didn't make a phone call around that and didn't ask a couple of questions, what happened was the closing was delayed and our clients were purchasing, if I'm not mistaken, they were purchasing in Nevada, right? I think they were going out to in and around Vegas. And in Nevada, part of what's normal and customary there is if you delay a closing, you start to pay a per diem to the seller. And so they had a closing delay here, which caused a closing delay out in Las Vegas. There's no per diem in Connecticut. That's statutory. So they were having to pay for the delay here and not getting paid up for the delay on our side. I use that as an example of doing some good due diligence on the mortgage side because it was an oversight. I mean, it was an oversight on our part, and it cost our client time and money, right? So make a phone call and just verify it. And if you ever get a document that says it's from the Royal Bank of Scotland, ask them for something local. That's the other thing I've learned. Who knew the Royal Bank of Scotland was actually in Scotland? My goodness. Number 10. Once the offer is negotiated and acceptable to both parties, ask the agent for the buyer to rewrite the offer with any new price and terms, right? You're going to have a nice clean copy for everyone to sign, and then everyone signs that within about 24 hours, right? Today with electronic signatures and whatnot, everything's online. There's no reason this has to take long. 24 hours max to get everybody's signature on that. You're going to ask the agent for the buyer who the buyers will be using as their attorney, who the home inspector will be, who the septic inspector will be, and who the buyer plans on utilizing to actually apply for the mortgage. And I put that in there because we've also had surprises where we got a pre-approval letter from ABC Mortgage, only to find out a couple of weeks later that they actually went ahead and applied through XYZ Mortgage, except we didn't have a pre-approval from XYZ Mortgage. So now XYZ Mortgage comes back and says, oh, you know what, your credit is off, or your ratios are wrong, or right? So make sure that they plan on actually filing application for the mortgage with the company that they provided the letter from. Number 12, once you have the information above, prepare a contract information sheet and send it to all the parties. You want to get all the documentation to the attorneys as quickly as you possibly can so they can begin work on all of that. Number 13, copy of all the paperwork, including any contract information, to the MCA for your market center. So either to Sam and Lisa or to Deb Linke within 3 days of a fully executed offer document, right? That's really important, within 3 days. Of course, we have a service now that all you have to do is send it to our concierge service, and that documentation will be uploaded into your command for you, as well as submitted to the market center and your MCA for you. You don't have to actually do any of that. You just have to send it into concierge services, right? And if you're curious about where concierge services lives, that's at kw203services.com. You can go there and follow those instructions. You can also go to the YouTube channel and search for concierge services training, because there's a bunch of videos online outlining that. And if I can just find a way, here we go. There we go, kw203services.com in your chat box. Number 14, once the inspection dates are set, be certain to inform the seller If there's anything special that the seller should do, like air out the house prior to inspection for radon, or sealing up the house prior to the inspections, anything like that, make sure that you have those discussions. And then, of course, report the property as either under contract, still showing, or under contract, depending on whether or not your seller wants to keep showing the property. Within, this is dated because it's no longer 48 hours, you now have only 24 hours to report status changes. So within 24 hours of the fully executed document. Yes, question, Ronnie.
Yeah, my question was from number 13, when
Okay.
you're talking about with the concierge service. So what you're saying is you wouldn't have to transmit it in command. I don't know if it's transaction or transmission. You would just send all the paperwork to them?
Correct.
Okay.
You sign up for the concierge services, you send the documentation to them. As long as the documentation is complete, they go ahead and we then upload it into your command for you. And
Okay.
then from your command, submit it to the MCAs through the market center. It's just
Okay,
a service
so that
that we,
that would take care of the commission information as well, or no? Is that separate?
yep, yeah, they'll do the commission and submit that as
Okay.
well. Yep.
And then the other question I had is just initially, when your property gets listed on the MLS, is that something they're doing as well? Did you say?
Yes, we also have concierge services that if you get all of your, if you get your listing contract and your data sheets and all the supporting documentation, you submit that to concierge, and then concierge will go ahead and upload your listing to the MLS on your behalf. It then comes back around to you to finalize, because they won't write the remarks, and
Okay.
you have to do a final check before you publish it. But if you don't want to be the one to enter it into the list, into the MLS, you send that to concierge and they'll do it for you.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
You're welcome. Number 16, stop by the inspection to check in and see if there's any information that you can provide, right? So recognize that you, as the listing agent, are not really invited to the inspection that is being had by the buyer. You can certainly stop in if your schedule allows it for 5 minutes, just to see how things are going. I actually prefer, because frankly, your time is better spent being available on the phone should there be any questions that pop up at the inspection, rather than you actually dropping in, right? However, it's not wrong to drop in. It's just not, it's not standard for listing agents to be at the inspection from start to finish. So either be available, maybe call halfway through to see how things are going, just in case there are questions, if you feel the need to stop in just for a few minutes. Number 17, at this point, you will need to keep all parties in action, set a schedule for yourself to be in constant contact, which means every few days, every 2 to 3 days, with the sellers, the buyer's agent, and the seller's attorney, right? You want to always be certain that all the plates are spinning and everyone's doing what they need to do to make sure that we keep the closing date on target. Once inspections are done, you can expect to hear from the buyer's agent or within 48 hours or so regarding any items that need to be addressed, right? Set expectations with the buyer's agent about when you'll expect to hear from them. And if they don't call you, call them. Hey, are we all set with inspection items? If so, could you please send me an email saying no inspection items to be handled or dealt with? Or if there are inspection items, let's get them on the table so that we can negotiate them through and see what the story is. Right, 19, keep tabs on the mortgage. Has the client made formal application? Has the appraisal been scheduled? When is it going to be done? Right, number 20, inform the sellers when the appraisal is going to take place once you find out. You do want to make sure the sellers know when the appraisal is going to take place. I got a call once from a very unhappy seller saying, hey, Rick, hey, how are you? Oh, I'm fine. How are you? Well, I'm less fine. Oh my goodness, how come? Well, because we had a surprise visit today. And I said, a surprise visit? What do you mean? And they said, well, apparently someone was here while we weren't home, walking through our very dirty, untidy house with a sink full of dirty dishes, and my kid's bed's not made, and a pile of laundry waiting to be folded in the family room. And I still wasn't getting it. And I said, I am so sorry. Who is it that was there? They were like, the appraiser came with the buyer's agent today. Oops, I forgot to tell them. That's why I made you this list, so that you don't forget these things, right? Use this as a checklist. Because sometimes you forget things, right? When you have one listing, it's easy to remember just about everything there is. And not even then sometimes. When you have 2 or 5 or 10 or 20 at a time, guess what? You need a system in place. You need to have a checklist. You need to make certain that you're going through those checklists to make sure people have the information that they need, right? That client and I got over that and lived to be happy another day. But those are calls that you don't want to have. She was upset with me, but she was more concerned that the appraiser was going to devalue their home because she hadn't had a chance to clean it. That's not really how it works, right? And so we got to have a conversation around the fact that the appraiser was there really to look at the bones of the house and the offerings of the house, not how tidy it was. And yet in her mind, until that appraisal came back, she was concerned that because of the condition, the tidiness of the house, that she would have a problem with appraisal. Make sense? Number 21, check in with the seller's attorney to make sure that contracts, if additional contracts are going to be written and sent by attorneys, check in with the attorneys, make sure that that's all happening, right? Once you know that they've been sent, if they're being sent, make sure that you're in contact with the other party, the other side, to make sure that they actually get signed, right? Again, your job is to just keep all the plates spinning and be talking to all the folks about what those plates look like. Erica's question, is the buyer's agent always present at the appraisal? So it's a great question. And the answer is, it depends. It depends on where you're selling property, right? In much of Fairfield County, the buyer's agent is the person who meets the appraiser at the property. Outside of Fairfield County, oftentimes it's the listing agent who meets the appraiser at the property. So geography might come into play. It might be if the listing agent is from a brokerage outside of Fairfield County, listing inside Fairfield County, they may just expect to have to show up for the appraisal. So it's a conversation between the agents, right? There have been times where my schedule didn't allow, even though I represented the buyer and it was local, my schedule didn't allow for me to be there. And so I'd call the listing agent to see if they could be there on my behalf, right? So sometimes it's a matter of getting that coverage. 22, once you know that the contracts have been sent, oh, I said that already. 23, negotiate any inspection items through to satisfaction to both parties. Once this is completed, have all the items drawn up in a little one page so that everyone's clear. Get that to both attorneys so everyone knows what's going on and what's been agreed to, right? We want to prevent confusion at all costs. You want to check in with the buyer's mortgage again, know where that stands. Number 25, this may sound silly. You want to encourage the sellers to begin packing as early as possible. I can't tell you how often, as a listing agent or a buyer's agent, I have shown up for the walkthrough of a property and the sellers are frantically like throwing things out of the window upstairs. Oh, we have to get out, right? Because they just didn't anticipate how much stuff they had, right? When you live in a house for a long time, Debbie, how many years did you live in the house that you're about to depart? 40?
39 years.
Right. 39 years. Did you accumulate some stuff?
Yeah, we've been working for about 3 months getting rid of stuff. And just when you think you're done, you find 2 more boxes of shredding to do.
There you go.
He's not kidding. I don't think it was with you. I think it was before a BR time. Literally things going out the window into the dumpster when we were way past due to go through a walkthrough. And one was a relocation client who didn't pack the house. I got there for the walkthrough and they hadn't packed a thing. The movers were there, but they were packing it up. No, just give them a calendar of events.
Yeah, typically there's a solid month to or so from the time frame we're talking about to the actual closing, right? So when you take the listing, my advice to sellers is, you know what, let's preemptively start packing now, right? Getting the house ready for the market has everything to do with, what if you packed up all the closets and put them in boxes and put the boxes in the basement, right? So at least there's a start, because now, and then as soon as you have an offer, let's remind them to get on that. So 26, once you have a signed contract, an agreement to all inspection items, and a mortgage that's cruising along, you may fall into a period of time where there's not a whole lot to communicate to your selling clients, right? To your listing clients. And so I want to make sure that you don't fall into the trap of, okay, well, we don't have to really talk for 30 days because not a whole lot's going on. You know, the mortgage is being handled and the attorneys are doing their work, and this, whatever's going on is going on. Guys, I want you to just be really clear about you communicating minimally with your seller clients. I personally think this goes for all the parties in the transaction, that you're talking to them every 2 or 3 days, even during that down period. A, you want to make sure that nothing has changed. B, you want to make sure that they realize that they're important to you. One of the best ways to make people feel just like a commission is to be hot and heavy with them, and then don't talk to them for 30 days, and then pick up a week before the closing again. Oh, look at that. Someone smells money, so now all of a sudden they're talking again. We call that commission breath, right? Be cautious that you don't get stuck in that. All right, so we're gonna stop at 26. 27 through the end of it is really just kind of getting to the closing, and we're gonna start handling that first thing tomorrow to finalize and finish our seller discussion. Let me just look at the question in the chat. Hold on one second. If there are issues with inspection, should a time frame be put on those items being addressed? Pardon me for not being visual. I'm at my other job. If there's an issue with the inspection, should a time frame be put on those items being addressed? So I'll answer that 2 ways, Erica. Typically, if there are issues with inspections, there is a time frame. It's built into the offer or the contract, where you have 2 or 3 days to get back and forth and come to an agreement about how we're going to address those issues moving forward. So if that's what you meant, that time frame is usually built into the contract, and it's just a couple of days to negotiate back and forth and get clarity. If what you meant by a time frame is things have to be done by a certain time, mostly that's done by closing. Usually any issues that pop up have to be finished by closing, but being clear about that. There are some things that need to be retested. So you may have to, for example, if you have to mitigate radon, right? You may have to mitigate radon in enough time to then have another test done to make sure that the numbers have dropped. So working on the time frame in that respect could be dependent upon what the issues were. So regardless of which way you were asking the question, I hope I answered both. Oh, good, I see that I did. Perfect. So we are going to finish up sellers tomorrow with a 10-minute conversation that we didn't get to today, and then move right into buyers. However, we want to be certain that you start your buyer experience with clarity around buyers' ability to purchase, right? You've heard the conversation, buyers have to be ready, willing, and able, right? Have you heard that phrase, ready, willing, and able? Well, so in our world, we don't like that phrase. In our world, we want buyers to be able, ready, and willing. Their ability to purchase is far more important than their willingness or readiness, right? Which is why you need to be certain and clear about their ability. So I asked Karen Mulreed to pop in, your mortgage partner from Westport Mortgage, to finish the day with you today, to kind of walk you through what that financing world looks like and how it's relevant to your buyers, answer any questions that you might have, and kind of start that relationship with you so that you have a go-to person if and when you have questions about financing. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Karen. Karen, I'm going to post, as soon as I get off camera here, I'm going to post the flyers you sent me in the chat. People can download them. And if you want me to pop one on the screen, if you want to go through
Oh.
one, just let me know. I can
Okay.
share my screen and pop it up on there.
Okay.
Without further ado, Karen Mulreed.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Nice to be with you all this afternoon. I'm Karen Mulreed. I am the president and co-owner of Westport Mortgage. For those of you who don't know me, we have been, and this is my little tagline, your mortgage partner at Keller since 2007. So we've been with you for a long time, and we know a lot about how the culture and how things work at Keller and what you need and how we can support you. So we are always here. I put my information in the chat room, and I have lots of, I have a big team here. I don't know if you all have met Paul Leibowitz, Bill McNamara, and Nancy Morgan. If you've been on any of the calls in the morning, you will see that we're always there, and we are all here to assist you 7 days a week. God help me, 24 hours a day. You will find that I will, write back to you or an email or a text at 3 o'clock in the morning if that's when I happen to be up and you had a question earlier. So do not hesitate to get in touch with us. 3 o'clock in the morning is a bit of an exaggeration, but we are here to support you and to give you the help you need so that you're successful, because when you're successful, we're successful. So does anybody have any questions about how the financing works or how we can assist you before I get started? Any areas that you want to touch on that you haven't experienced that I can shed some light on?
I'm just curious from the beginning of being a rep, and you meet somebody who's interested in buying, and they haven't gotten a mortgage, or they're just starting out. So as a rep, obviously, you're going to say, we have partners and refer them. But
Right.
I guess what I'm asking you is how would you think best to present the introduction, and then what would you like as a rep? What would you like me to tell them in relationship to Westport Mortgage? Obviously, I could just give them the name and hey, call. But is there more
Sure.
information that you think would help? And when they call you, also that maybe they're prepared with some information that would be best to have on an initial call.
That is a great question. One thing you can tell, one thing I will repeat is something that Rick said for years and years. You always ask your buyers, are they planning to pay cash or are they financing? Because they love the idea that you think they have the ability to pay cash. So they feel very good about themselves. And most people will laugh and just say, oh no, of course I'm not paying cash. I couldn't possibly afford that. And like most people, and today, really to take on a mortgage, it's really cheap money, and it's a great way to leverage and use your money. One, if you just want to have it saved. Two, if you want to buy other properties or spend it on vacation or invest it in other ways, or, you're saving for your kids' college. You might not want to take all of your money and buy a house in cash. So I would ask that initially, because it kind of softens the conversation as well. Also, you can tell them that we're your mortgage partner and that you have a team of people that you work with, and you can rely on them, you trust them, they will give good information. And this is something that another agent at Keller used to tell their clients: if something goes wrong or you need help, I can step in and help you when I know who we're working with. There's nothing better for me than working with an agent that I know and also an attorney that I know, because I know if something does come up and we need to figure something out or come up with a good solution or a plan, I know I can reach them. And when you're in the middle of a transaction, communication is the most important aspect of it, in my opinion. And we try very hard to keep in touch with the client. Like Rick said, every week throughout the entire transaction, we will call you, we will call the buyer, and we will call the attorney every week just to say, hey, everything's progressing nicely, or here's where we stand. The appraisal's been ordered. You'll be getting emails from us throughout the transaction just to give you periodic updates when the loan has been submitted to the lender, when the appraisal comes in, when the conditions are cleared, when we're ready to close. You'll be on the email, and so will the buyer and the attorney. And it kind of keeps us all on the same page, and we look like a good team, and we look like we're communicating, which we are. It's not just an appearance. We are communicating, and we are keeping each other up to date. And it avoids some of the questions and some of the insecurities and the stress that the clients go through. I mean, I went through it too when I bought my house. You know, it's just a stressful time. You have a big changes in your life. So the one thing that you can also tell them is that we are mortgage brokers. And as mortgage brokers, we have about 30 different lenders that we work with. And what does that mean to them? It means choice. It means a variety. It also means that we can tailor the mortgage for their needs, as opposed to just going to a bank that has just one set of products and can't think out of the box. So I'll give you an example. I spoke with a past client a couple of days ago. He thought he was going to be fine. He said, you know, we bought our house years ago. We're getting ready to sell it. We have investment property that we're selling. We want to buy another house. We're looking at $1.2 million. We want to put down 10% or 15%. I said, fine, you know, up to $1 million, you can put down 10%, no problem. Well, he sent all of his income and savings to me because I wanted to make sure that he was able to buy. And his credit score came up at 630. Well, that stopped that option right there, because at 630, he can't get the 10% down to $1 million. If I was just a bank, a big bank, I wouldn't be able to offer him the options that I did today. So here's what I did today. We looked at his credit. He said everything on his credit report was correct. He was late. You know, he did have some past due payments and he had some charge-offs. I put him in touch with someone that I work with in credit repair so that he could get a professional opinion on how he could move forward to improve that credit score. So we're working on that. In addition to that, I told him that we have another product, a mortgage product that does not verify income. So we could just use his wife's income, or we would not use her income. I take that back. We would just use his wife's savings and credit to qualify for the mortgage, because her credit score was 729 and we needed a 720 for this product. It's a no ratio product. And you might ask, what is a no ratio product? It's a mortgage product. It could be a 5-1, a 7-1. And when I say 5-1 and 7-1, for those of you who aren't in the business very long, that means the rate is fixed for 5 years and then adjusts annually thereafter. They're called 5-1 ARMs, or 5-1 adjustable rate mortgages. The same applies for the 7-1, fixed for 7 years, and then it adjusts yearly thereafter. There's also a 30-year fixed. He needed to put 25% down, and he needs the credit score of 720, and he's working on both of those. So now he's got two options: improve his credit and take the no ratio product that we were able to offer him. And that's the kind of consulting that we like to do here for your clients, because everyone thinks that their profile is fine, and in many cases it is, but in many cases they need an alternative. Maybe they need an adjustable rate product. Maybe they need an FHA. I would have taken him and put him in an FHA product because FHA loans allow for lower credit scores, but they don't go up to $1 million. If he was a vet, I would have steered him in that direction. He's not, because VA loans will also accept lower credit scores and higher debt ratios. So just having those options to share with a client, one, makes them feel better and more confident about buying a home, but it also opens up their world to different avenues that they can work on, so that maybe they're not buying the home today, but maybe they're buying it 3 months from now, 6 months from now. We don't tell anyone no. We try to give them a path towards home ownership, because it's everybody's dream. Does that help?
Oh, that helps tremendously. I mean, it not only, it helps me to realize why it's beneficial for them and why it's also beneficial just between us all, because like you said, you do keep us in touch where they're working with someone else. We're not going to get that info, and it's kind of hard to, see the thing going wrong if you're not a part of it. So, yeah, it's very helpful. I appreciate that.
Right, and you want to know up front. So I was able to tell the realtor yesterday and today, here's where we stand. Here's what's preventing your buyer from, getting all excited and taking that leap, because they have a lot of things to work out. And like I told him today, the buyer, I said, we have to figure out where the down payment's coming from. We have to make sure you have money for closing. We have to figure out how to improve your credit or use the credit score that we have. And we have to figure out how much of the money that you're going to be taking in from your proceeds of sale on your existing house, how much of that can we afford to use now? So it's not any one aspect of, it's not just one thing
Oh, yeah, it sounds like lots of pieces.
that points you in the direction of, can I buy a house, or can't I? I call it a puzzle. You put all those pieces of the puzzle together, and then you can help them make an educated decision on how they should move forward. It's very much the same as what you are doing when you have your buyer consultation, where you're sitting down with the buyer and figuring out what's important to them. What type of house do they want? What type of neighborhood? Do they want a condo? Do they want a big 4-bedroom house? What kind of amenities do they need? You're doing that while we're going through their credit profile to say, what do you have for down payment? Do you have money for closing? So we look at their W-2s, we look at their tax returns, we look at their 1099s in your case, for all of you who are 1099 employees. We look at Social Security or alimony, child support. We look at all of that income to help the client figure out how much they can afford. And then we look at their savings. How much of the savings can they afford to put towards their down payment, and how much do they have to get that monthly mortgage payment where they want it to be each month? So we look at all of those things. We want to make sure they have money for closing. It costs money to buy a house. It's not, oh, I know, Debbie, it's appalling, isn't it? So we like to make sure that when we have that initial conversation, that I could say, listen, it doesn't cost any money. I don't charge anything, because I don't charge anything. I get paid from the lender the same way that you get paid from the seller. I get paid from the lender. The lender is happy to pay me for closed business, because they're only paying me when I close a loan. So they're happy to do that. But if I tell your client, listen, you don't pay anything because you're not paying me, that's not honest, and that's not giving them the information that they need to close. So we go through all the closing costs with them, and some of the funds that they need are costs. So underwriting is a cost, an appraisal is a cost, credit report is a cost, your attorney is a cost. The attorney will do a title search. They'll get you title insurance. They'll record the mortgage. They'll actually do the closing. All of those are costs. What's not a cost is the fact that you need home insurance, that you need to pay property taxes, that you need to put money in your escrow account at closing. Those are costs in a sense, but they're costs because you're going to be a homeowner, not costs associated with buying that home. So we go through all of that with your client. And any of you who would like to go through the process with me to see how I do it, and maybe to give you a feel for what they can expect, please call me. My information is in the chat box so that you can experience it too. And you can make up, any kind of profile that you want about yourself. It doesn't have to be real, but let's go through so that you can understand the part that I play, because I couldn't sell a house. And I've been, with you all, I've been in this business since 1997, and I still can't sell a house. I can finance a house, but I can't sell it. So there's lots of ways that you can finance homes, and we want to work with you to help your client go down that path. Any questions till now? Okay. I have included a few flyers that you can take a look at, that you can share with your clients. You are welcome to, I don't know if they're all PDFs or Word documents, but if you'd like to have them in a Word document and you'd like to cut and paste them and put them in your own email, I'm happy to have you do that. I don't have any problem with you, taking the flyers that we've created and using them as your own. There's a flyer. Rick, can you put it up on how purchase loans are made? I don't know if he's still there. Okay. If you take a look, this flyer just gives you a step-by-step, something to read, something for those high Cs that they can take a look at and have something to refer to, at their leisure, to see what the steps are to buying a home. And the first step is always the pre-approval. You never want to take anybody out. I guess you're not putting them in your cars anymore, but you might. Or meet them at the house without knowing how much they can afford. And the reason for that is, one, you don't want to waste your time, certainly, which is precious, but also you want them to have a good experience. And I always find that if I'm not worried about how much I can spend on something, that it's a much happier shopping experience. So whether it's groceries or shoes or a coat or whatever it is, even a house or a car, you always have a budget set for yourself. And we do the same for a home purchase. When you know that you can afford to spend $200 or $500 or $1 million or $2 million, then you can look at any house that you want and make the experience with you all the more fun. And it should be fun. It should be stress-free. And this is what the pre-approval does for you. So always have them seek out advice of someone that you trust, someone that you can call, someone that you can ask questions of. And I tell all of my clients, you're a teacher. Could I stand in front of your class and teach the 5th grade? Absolutely not. But can I finance a home? I can. So, we make those analogies with our clients so that they feel comfortable asking what sometimes they think are the silliest of questions. But when you have the information in front of you and you understand why the bank is asking for certain documents or why you have to take a certain path, then you're more than happy to do it because you understand it. It makes sense and it helps you reach your goal of home ownership. Any questions? Please feel free to jump in. Lending has certainly changed over the years. Rates are still really low. They are going to continue to be low. I would say for the next year or two, we're going to see low rates. We might see a little bit of a jump later on in the year, but rates are still 3% or less, and it is a great time to buy. One of the things that I tell my clients when they talk to me about, should I wait or should I buy now? Remember, housing prices may be up now, but they're certainly projected to continue to rise, but rates are really low. So if you can take today's rate and buy a house at today's price, as opposed to waiting for, next year's rates and next year's prices, which, are all unknowns to us. It's a better deal. And when they see that and they understand that, then they, feel more comfortable going forward, because everybody's worried, oh, the housing prices are going up. Well, it's a wonderful time to buy in any price range. There are lots and lots of mortgage options for anybody under $1 million. You can put 3% down. Not up to $1 million. You can put 3% down up to $548,000. You can put 3.5% up to $601,000. You can put 10% down to $1 million. Those are all big price points, and you don't need 20% down. I still have clients telling me, oh, I think I need to put 20% down. I'm not in a position to buy. Please take that myth off the table. It's so much better for them to take a look at to have us take a look at their finances with them so that they can figure out what they can afford to buy. Am I out of time? Because I could talk about this. I could talk about this forever. But you do have lots of options. And if you want to talk to me anytime, just give me a call or send me a text, and I'm happy to help. And so is everybody here. Paul, Bill, Nancy, we're all here for you. We have a great team.
Well, thank you so much, Karen. We appreciate you spending time with us to kind of prep us and get us ready for any buyer financing questions that we might have. I reposted Karen's
Thank you.
Information in the chat, guys. So do take note of that and reach out to her directly with any other questions. With that, we are finished for the night. Again, we will start tomorrow right on time at 4 o'clock. We'll finish up the anatomy of a seller transaction. I'll answer any questions on the listing side that you might have. And then we're going to dive right into buyers. We have Thursday and Tuesday only left. So we'll spend both of those working quickly through the buyer consultation scripts, which I'll send you tomorrow morning, as well as the anatomy of a buyer transaction. And we'll finish up on Tuesday with the Cat House story and a recap of our time together. I will see you tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. sharp. See ya. Good night.
Bye.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you, Rick.